Guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we talk about the Big Boy 4005 wreck. Now, this tragedy was a long time ago, and it caused at least five deaths during its accident. So let's get right into it. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and let's get right into it. On April 27th, 1953, Big Boy 4005 was departing Rawls, Wyoming, early in the morning. There was 5 people on that train that day, 3 in the front on the train and 2 in the back. In the front of the train was Leo Murray, the engineer of that train. He was 42 years old and had worked with Union Pacific for about 20 years as an engineer. He had a wife named Linda and 2 children named Patricia, and who was 13 years old, and Mitchell, who was 9. There was also someone named Lawrence Edge, who was the fireman of the train. He was 23 years old. He was born July 4th, 1929, in Los Angeles, Colorado. He had just returned from a 2-year of duty with the Railroad Division in the Army in Korea. Lastly, there was Brakeman James R. Anderson. He was 36 years old. He was born April 7th, 1917, in Robertson, Wyoming. He was a World War II veteran and had a wife named Anne and 2 children named Lola, who was 10 years old, and Robert, who was 6 years old. There was also 2 people in the caboose of the train, who was conductor James Walker and brakeman Ivan Shergan. And, for a fun fact, there was a total of 62 cars that the Big Boy 4005 was pulling that day. Big Boy 4005 went through Williamsburg around 9:10 a.m., but in about 10 minutes, they did not know that their lives would be in very, very great danger. That day, there was some cloud. It was cloudy, but with some light rain. About 8.5 miles from Williamsburg, a Union Pacific crew was working on the tracks, but the shepherd with his flock needed to get across the tracks safely. The size of the shepherd's flock was not known, but the crew needed to find out when and what trains would be coming through. The first train was westbound 4005 West, Red Desert at 9:15. Another train was scheduled for westbound 148 West, Red Desert at 9:50 a.m. Eastbound was 3969 at 9:15 a.m. and eastbound 1470 East Red Desert at 9:55 a.m. After the workers got all the details, they split up their team, so one group went to the eastbound switch and one went to the westbound switch. The Big Boy 4005 was coming from the west. The workers didn't think anything about it. After they switched that switch, that would have shown the red signal down the line, but it was way too late. As 4005 approached the east end of the Red Desert siding, the Union Pacific section man opened the siding switch, and then, seeing the massive locomotive bearing down on him, Franklin made an unsuccessful attempt to close it before the engine passed. The engineer made an emergency approach of the brakes and engine entering the siding. Now here's a quote from the engineer or the fireman, I can't really tell. I think this is from the fireman, so here it is. I'm only expected to say now, but I can visualize the fireman entrance and the head brakemen screaming at the top of their voices to the engineer, "Stop, stop, red switch ahead," but it was too late. Here we go again. 4005 entered the open switch at 50 miles per hour, causing it to flip off the rails and skid onto the siding, or onto the side along its left side, tearing up rail and railroad bed. The locomotive's tender and the first 18 cars derailed. The cab of the locomotive was destroyed as the tender tore into it and twisting and smashing metal. The first 12 cars were badly damaged and piling up to 70 feet high. The 13 and 17 cars were somewhat damaged, but forced of the impact against each other, topping off the rails. Scattered around the scene where the train loads were tractors, dead hogs, typewriters, sewing machines, and other merchandise. The engineer Leo Murphy and the fireman Lawrence Edwards were killed instantly, and amazingly, the front brakeman James Anderson was alive. Now here's another quote, probably from like a policeman, I think, because police arrived there and maybe other workers, and this might be the workers. It does not say from what I looked up. When I arrived on the scene of the derailment, Livestream was still shooting at least 100 feet into the air, as they were not being able to get close enough to try to rescue the crew on the head end. The rear end crew, the conductor and rear brakeman, had survived and were just walking around dazzled. So you might be wondering why weren't they able to get close enough to the engine? Well, you gotta think. Steam engines, they are boiling water to produce steam. Since the big boy tipped over, they are not able to get close enough to that locomotive until it settles down. Yeah, so when the smoke and the water cooled down, then they were able to safely get to the cab of the locomotive. Now let's get going. This is getting exciting. The rear crew did not know anything was wrong until they saw the emergency signal from the engineer. When they looked out their window and saw the cars piling, they both rushed out of the caboose. Walker headed to the front of the train and using a dispatcher's phone call to let them know what happened. He could not get near the wreck as of the hissing steam blowed around the injured train. It took nearly 25 minutes for the steam to subside. Brake Anderson's, the person who survived from the cab, left leg was twisted and pinned between a wood seat and the metal side of the cab. He was trapped in an area of the cab no larger than about 18 feet high and 4 feet wide for 10 hours, while rescue workers removed tons of coal and cut through steel to free him. Anderson asked the rescuers to have a drink of water and, of course, around that time, a cigarette. A doctor was able to reach him in a narrow opening in the defibrillator, a dose of morphine to subside Anderson's terrible pain. Anderson later told those rescuers that his hands hurt and that he was chilling a little, but no longer could feel pain in his foot. Anderson also told the workers, this is from his quotes, "He threw it right in front of us. The switch, they threw it right in front of us. They didn't give us a chance. It felt like the engine rocked, but I don't know how many times it rocked. The next thing I knew, I felt hissing steam hitting me in the face, and I thought I was a goner. All I could think of was getting my hands over my face." Sadly, Anderson died at 10:57 a.m. on Wednesday, April 29th, from second to third degree burns covering 80% of his body. That is terrible, you guys. So, just so you guys know, the people in the cab, there are absolutely no survivors. The 2 people in the caboose, they survived. So I think actually totally there are 3. Here we go, let's keep going. Early reports indicated that the engineer and fireman were alive after the accident, as 2 workers said they spoke to the men. This later turned out to be false. The 2 workers were actually talking to each other from the opposite sides of the train. Track crews worked swiftly to clear the wreckage. East and West rail traffic was delayed for about 9 hours until the construction crew installed a shifty new rail traffic around the accident site. Priority was to resume a normal traffic schedule. Some westbound trains were rerouted through Cheyenne and on the Denver and Rio Grande. Many carloads of pigs were killed upon impact. According to the workmen, at some pigs were provided comic relief during the emotionally physical draining rescue operation. The pigs would regain consciousness and with some terrific grunt, it would take off running through the curses. I don't know. Now, also next, a couple feet back from the tracks, as you saw in like one picture I showed you, there was a highway. This was the Lincoln Highway 30. At that time, was just a single lane on each side. Now, here's a quote from a person. "When I arrived at the Red Desert, the sight was shocking. Railroad cars had flipped completely over the bus stop and were laying everywhere. Alone, the highway patrol car was about there trying to direct traffic. But it was a very dangerous situation, and that the train had been hauling those giant Iowa pigs to market that weighed about 600 pounds, and were running away like crazy and headed after the derailment, attacking people, the highway patrolman having to shoot them with his service revolver." So since the pigs were free basically and they survived, they would go crazy, and basically anyone they saw, they would try attacking them, and were getting all over the highway, and it was nuts. It was crazy. Here's another quote from probably a worker in the, what they call graveyard, but rail yard basically. "Several days later, I was back at work on the graveyard shift, and the dispatcher told us that the engine from the derailment was being brought back in and was just at the west end of the yard, getting ready to come past the little dispatch office passenger depot. We all stood, and in the still of darkness, not yet visible, we could hear this groaning and wrenching of metal coming very slowly down the rails, being brought in behind the big boy. It gave you a very eerie feeling, as if it became visible in the old lamps of the dispatch office. It slowly came into view, and if ever I thought I had seen a ghost, that it was. I did not know a big boy could die, but there it was. And how sad it was, just limping along like an old gray horse with one broken leg. The cab was completely gone, and the gray color of the firebox was visible, and some of the side rods were missing, and it looked as if even the frame had been broken. It just lumbered by us all, and standing there with our mouths wide open, not believing what we were seeing, this once huge, beautiful thing that was once a living machine of giant steel. It disappeared into the darkness like it came, being dragged like a person to a grave. At the east end of the yard for temporary storage, I could almost see fire engines and the conductor waving to me as it passed. Now you can actually go see the Big Boy 4005. It is in a museum. Where is this place at? So here at the Forney Museum of Transportation, you can go see the Big Boy 4005. Like pictures here. Here's another picture right here. And you're probably wondering, it crashed. How is it still here? Well, after the Big Boy crashed, it was being towed away, like I said in the last paragraph I did say, to the Union Pacific shops. They fully repaired it, and it actually was able to run for about 5 to 7 more years until it got retired. You can go see it. This is, I believe, in Denver, Colorado. So go visit the Big Boy 4005. Don't forget to like and subscribe to me. In my next video will probably be a layout update. I did a lot of things on my layout. Hopefully you can enjoy that. So I will see you in the next one. Bye bye now.